Hello and welcome to another sketchbook tour. This one's from late 2024 and the early part of 2025, so almost half a year ago. Here's Wendy from a collaboration. Here's Wendy again for another collaboration with two other people. Here's Masta, the partner to Wendy. Here's one of their fiends, sort of a lizard person. This is one of the other heroes with Wendy and Masta, sort of a blue genie. Here's one of the owl men, another partner to Wendy and Masta and blue gin. This is a frog that has mystical powers, very prophetic. Here's Masta again, the sword. Here's Zach Max Martin looking at his spy pad. Here's Matt Rise floating in the air with his superpowers. Here's Arunak flying in the air with her newly acquired powers from the Plus Rush Bush. Here's Dark, quick colored pencil sketch on the move. Here's Tom Trueblood on the move too. Here's Tom Trueblood sort of with the sun behind him looking at his train watch at the train station. Here's Tom Trueblood again getting ready for a fight. Here's Tom Trueblood again reading a report. Here's Tom Trueblood again on the move. Here's Snork, a ghost. Here's a hero. Here's a colored pencil sketch from reference. Here's Tom Trueblood again, highlighting something in the distance. Here's Snork again, the ghost. Here is a hero. Can't remember where he's from, but it's just a hero. Here's another hero adventurer. Here is the warrior from a story long time ago. Here's Dark again from Crystal Guards with his magical gravity orbs, gravity shadow orbs. Here's Amy, sort of a military agent person. Here's Arunak again, jumping in the air. Here's Gears from Crystal Guards. Here's Sky from Crystal Guards. Here's Fire from Crystal Guards. Here's Noliode from Master King Lord. Here's Zach Max Martin with his exhibiting his tech gadgets. He can impulse himself through the air. Here's Matt Rise again, using his powers to summon something. Here's Tom Trueblood trying to kick a ball. Here's Snork again, the ghost. Here's another adventurer. Here's just a person. Just another pencil sketch. Another pencil sketch. Here's Tom Trueblood again, summoning his anger, I guess. Here's another adventurer again. There he goes. Here's Snork again. Here's a rough draft of some of the characters from Chronicles that I'm working with a friend James. Here's another quick sketch of some of the characters from Crystal Guards, sort of the beginning of the quest. Here's Samoan from Chronicles with his giant sword. Here's Bresh with his stick. Here's a lesson from a class, another lesson from a class. Here's another lesson from a class working with strokes and different types. Here's, I'm a fan of the Washington Wizards. This is Chris Middleton. Here's a quick pencil sketch from a reference. Here's another quick pencil sketch from a reference. Here's yet another one from a reference. An old fella. There's a rock face. Here's a little monster from a reference. Nosferatu from a reference. Here's Dark again, a quick pencil sketch. Here's Fire, with a quick pencil sketch. Here's Matt Rise again, floating in the air with his superhero powers. Here's Sky. Here's Gears. He's sort of a tech wizard. Here's another sketch of a face. Here's Dark with his wielding two swords with his orbs. Here's Fire landing an elbow. Here's a colored pencil sketch of just an elf Here's another elf fighter. Here's fire again. Quick colored pencil sketch. Here's fire again, with exhibiting his fire powers. Here's Sky with his staff. Here's a practice, just a sphere with colored pencils. Here's a cylinder. Here's a square. Here's a face of Tom Trueblood. Here's another sketch of colored pencils. Here's a Runak, a colored pencil sketch. Here's another sphere practice. Here's Gears trying to run from imagination. Here's a reference colored pencil sketch. And here's another reference colored pencil sketch. I believe that might be the end. Yeah, that's the end. Well, thanks for coming along. Have a great day. Bye.